Good afternoon, everyone, and a very, very, very warm welcome to everybody. Thank you, EAA, for giving us this platform, for having this dialogue around what it means to drive big and audacious goals. I have to remind everybody that EAA's Project Educate a Child initiative is a living example of those audacious goals. I think in 2012, EAC launched and declared its goal of bringing and reaching 10 million out-of-school children. And they have already exceeded that target. So today's conversation is very much about what it takes to make big audacious goals and the complexity of that in terms of converting it into results. And we have an amazing panel with us today. Let me quickly introduce you. His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete, Board Chair of the Global Partnership for Education and former President of the Republic of Tanzania. Welcome, sir. We all know Malala Yousafzai, education activist and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and one of my favorite people in the whole world. Mr. Al-Khoury, Director General of Qatar Fund for Development. Welcome, sir. And I think everyone in the audience pretty much knows you. And Ms. Catherine Russell, Executive Director of Unicef. Welcome, ma'am.
We risk having a generation of children who without education may lack the knowledge and the skills to contribute to their families, to their communities, and to their societies.
People just don't have access to safe places to go to school.
Collaborative, integrated approaches that build on existing project infrastructure need to be the priority.
Education for all, education for marginalized children, the responsibility of everyone.
Hence, it is imperative that we make sure that no child is left behind.
Investing in education is very important, and it also needs the engagement of all actors, all partners, and the global community.
ADB's partnership with Education Above All will blend loans with grants in Bangladesh and Pakistan to make our assistance more attractive, to enroll out-of-school children and to ensure their learning, to prevent any dropout.
It took us 25 years to build our first 1,000 schools. Then we met you all, and it took us only 5 years to build our second 1,000 schools. And over the next 5 years, we're going to build another 2,000 schools. We're not going to build all those schools on our own, but together with partners, we can make that happen so that there are no more out-of-school children.
With that really inspiring video. His Excellency, may I invite you to make some opening remarks, please?
Good afternoon. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Madam Safina Hussein, for the kind words of introduction. Well, I feel greatly honored to share the stage with such distinguished panelists. At the beginning, I told Safina, I feel intimidated. Well, thank you, Education Above All, for organizing this important event. As she said, I am chairman of the board of the Global Partnership for Education. GPE is the world's only partnership and fund dedicated exclusively to bringing a quality education to the most marginalized children. When we began 20 years ago, we partnered with 7 low-income countries. Today, GPE is working with 76. Since GPE's inception, 160 million more children are in school, and more than half of them are girls. We have raised $4 billion during the last replenishment round in London in July last year. Our target is 5 billion. We are still looking for 1 billion. If we can have kind people here. and pledge to contribute, it will be the icing and the cake of my visit to this conference. But what do we intend to do with the money that we are raising? WinGP would like to use this investment to enable 175 million primary age children to learn. We would like to reach 140 million students with professionally trained teachers, because one of the problems we have is children learning under the care of teachers who have not been professionally trained. We also want to get 8 million more children in school, and more than half of them girls. We've been able to achieve so much in the 2 decades. Why have we been able to do that? Because, like the theme of this conference, we've been able to catalyze transformation of education systems in partner countries. When GPE believe in transformation, and it has been our central focus. To get there, we must be audacious. Our audacious vision is quality education for every single child. Well, it sounds simple, but it's not easy to achieve. Why is it a challenge? First, there are just simply too many children who are out of school. Their number is estimated to be 250 million, with girls being the majority. The COVID-19 pandemic, as you may remember, has exacerbated the situation. It has been a major setback to learning. At its peak, when schools were closed, about 1.6 billion children were out of school. We already have 500 million, and COVID another 1.6 billion out of school. Some 14 million may not come back to school. And 24 million girls are in danger of becoming child brides. Also, there is the problem of climate change, with the natural disasters interfering with schooling. During conflict, unfortunately, there's too many conflicts on this planet. Schools are being targeted by the warring parties. The Geneva Convention says don't target schools, don't target hospitals. The law used the pretext soldiers have been hiding in those schools. So schools have been targeted, and in the process children lose the opportunity to get education. And last but not least, because of a dire shortage of education financing. Funding for education is inadequate. That is why we in GP have come up with some innovative financing tools, and we think they are critical. For example, our GP multiplier leverages $3 of external funds for every $1 of GPE grants. And the Smart Financing Education Initiative, a partnership between GPE, the Arab Coordination Group, and the Islamic Development Bank, is increasing funding to transform education systems and educate millions more children. Our unique financing mechanisms, along with our inclusive partnership model that puts country governments at the center, we believe will help us to realize our audacious vision. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think your words really carry a lot of power. I mean, I work on the ground. I started Educate Girls 15 years ago, and we work over 20,000 villages and things. And during the pandemic, I just want to give a couple of examples. The kind of impact we're seeing on the children. Over 500 days schools were closed. I happened to be in a village during the entire pandemic. A girl who was in the 7th grade in March 2020 is today in the 9th grade. How is she going to make it through secondary school, right? So you're absolutely right. We're going to see a massive surge, a massive bulge of out-of-school children right now. Poverty is getting worse. I have children that I was teaching that are now working in coal mines, are definitely married, have been, their parents have had to migrate, so therefore they have no schooling. The situation is really dire for our poor children, for our vulnerable children. So thank you. And I think I love what you said. We need a war chest for this right now. Business as usual and business as usual commitments are definitely not going to cut it. And I wish that during this conference you get not just 5 billion but 10 billion, because that is the kind of war chest we are going to need in service of our children. Otherwise their future is gone forever. So Malala, I'm going to come to you. I absolutely, you're not somebody to think small. If somebody has to talk about audacious goals, I think you have a big vision. So my question really for you is, your concern is the education of the next generation of girls. And I think we're at the risk of losing that because of the pandemic. I feel like girls' education is the shadow pandemic. So from your experience, what do you think are the key roles of partners in your endeavor, and what do you value most about these partnerships?
Yeah, thank you so much, Safina. His Excellency Kikwete summarized it really well, what needs to be done. So I started Malala Fund for the mission of girls' education. And I remember when I was initially asked about the vision of the organization, I said, I want all girls to be in school. They're like, can we be more specific? One country was like, no. In every corner of the world, every girl should have access to complete and quality education. And I always think about the time when I was 11 years old. The Taliban had announced a ban on girls' education in Swat Valley in the north of Pakistan. And I woke up one morning and I could not go to school. That moment, I realized that just because of my gender, just because of my identity, I am deprived of one of the basic human rights that I should have, which is to learn, which is to read, which is to have some goals in my life, which is to participate actively in society. And that was the moment I realized that the world is losing so much by not investing in girls' education. Today we talk about 130 million girls being out of school. That is a loss not just for the girls, but for our economies, for our countries, for our communities as well. We know that when girls are educated, it adds up to $30 trillion to the world economy. So you might need a few, 2-3 extra, billion dollars, but you add trillions to the world economy. We also know that when we educate girls, it improves economies, it reduces the likelihood of war, it helps us mitigate climate change, it reduces poverty. The advantages are enormous. So my question is always like, what are we waiting for? Why is it so hard to get this done? Why is it taking so long? But we do know that this is an audacious goal, but it requires partnership. It requires working together with other organizations, local community activists, and the model we have at Malala Fund is locally led. We support activists in more than 9 countries, including Brazil, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nigeria, and these activists are doing research, they're pushing for policy changes, they are focusing on issues which are impacting girls, so including like training female teachers, bringing in gender inclusive content and curriculum, ensuring safety in schools, ensuring like transportation problems. So through this work I have realized that partnerships are very much needed. We have to collaborate, we have to work together, and that's why I partner with Global Partnership for Education as well, to continue pushing countries to meet the financial targets. Because every year, unfortunately, they don't meet the commitments. They don't. They always make less than the target. And my question is always like, if you're required to make $100 million goal, why do you make only 50? Why do you make only 60? Because you know that it would have consequences. It accumulates and it makes the targets for next year even worse. That means you have to make even bigger contributions because you could not invest enough the previous years. So I hope that countries meet the commitments that they need to make for Global Partnership for Education. And I have come across so many ministers here, and all of them have asked me, like, what can we do? And I think, the basics are quite simple in terms of like the role of the governments. You need to meet the budget target, which is 20% recommended for education. 4 to 6% of your GDP should be allocated towards education. You need to ensure that you invest in quality education. You need to invest in gender inclusive education, and you focus on girls in specific because they're more likely to be deprived of education and they're more likely to be missed out. And as countries working together, you need to ensure that you are investing in all these partnerships that are there, wanting to create a world where all children can have access to safe and quality education. So, sometimes it's just meeting the targets that can make such a huge difference. So I hope that we see the 5 billion commitment for GPE, coming soon. Like, I hope that it happens.
Thank you, Malala. Thank you. Those really, really, really powerful words. Mr. Al-Kuwari, we can all have goals, but if we don't have money, it doesn't lead to anything. You're the Director General of the Qatar Fund for Development, and Qatar has made education a priority for its foreign assistance. Can you explain why this goal is key, and why is it a key part of Qatar's strategy?
Thank you. First, I would like to say how privileged I feel to be part of this panel and having this audience discussing education. And I would like to thank Education above all for organizing this event. His Excellency and Malala mentioned, covered various topics when it comes to education. And I find it shocking that we still discuss the right of girls' education in 2022. And from our point of view, it's education, as you rightly mentioned, is a human right. And it comes very deep from Qatar culture values when it comes to education. Education has been always deep in our culture without discrimination. Actually, the results of our education have impacted positively the girls' education, positively the workforce in Qatar. I'm very proud to say that in Qatar Fund for Development we are 85% female to male ratios. And actually, this is not something that we have planned for. We just have very good, qualified female graduates from the best universities here in Qatar, and I feel myself as a man, a minority in this woman-led organization. Actually, I feel myself minority at home, and because I have 6 girls, so actually my daughter, she's Salwa, she's here. I'm very proud of her and her education, and I would like to express the appreciation that Qatari population have for education and the way that we reflect this in our international development. And actually on this, we have the policy directions when it comes to education from the top, from the leadership, from His Highness. And we have the direction as well from Her Highness Sheikh Moza bint Nasser for the international development. Actually, she's pushing us all to do more and more into education. And we don't think of primary and secondary education, and even we started to do more even in giving scholarships here in Qatar and abroad for university. Education and quality education should be available to everyone. I'm very proud that we are hosting here in Qatar and sponsoring the Dreamers, the Afghani robotics teams, who actually they went to the same school that Sal was going to, and was led by Her Excellency, the minister. And so those values, this is why we are doing this. Actually, it comes deep from us, and the majority of our ODA funding goes to education. And actually everywhere, everybody is pushing us to do more in education. We focus on the fund on human development. I'm very glad to see the minister that we have signed an agreement with today with education above all. 7 countries, around 1.5 million students that we are supporting in Africa. And the more that we see go to projects and education, this is the money that we happy to invest, because we see the outcome of this economically, socially, stability of countries, health-wise, the impact on education. It's really an investment. We call it an investment because it's really an investment in development. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think your words are very wise. Education is such a multiplier for all of these challenges. But I also loved what you said. You said, I can't believe that it's still not a right. It is a right. And I think the investment needs to come just from that right. It's saying every single child must have their right to that education. So thank you so much. And I think Qatar's leadership in this is sort of unparalleled. With the Educate a Child, with having, the 10 million goal. Everybody else has moved very heavily into quality education, but there's a vacuum in this access, in bringing out of school children back into school. The pandemic is going to make it much, much, much worse. And we have, in Educate a Child, a really strong player to help impact this. So thank you, sir. Thank you. So, Catherine, if I may come to you, can you talk to us about UNICEF's bold goals, and also how are you sort of managing for balancing innovation, performance, and risk in light of big, audacious goals?
Well, thank you, Safina, and thanks for the work that you're doing on getting girls into school. I really appreciate that very much, and you've put together an amazing panel here, so thank you for that. UNICEF does many things on education, and I think that I would say, first of all, it is a huge, huge challenge right now. It was a huge challenge before, but COVID has certainly exacerbated that to a great degree. We've done some recent work looking at sort of trying to get a lay of the land of where children are around the world. And one of the things we've discovered is that roughly 70% of age 10 children around the world are now not really able to read or understand a very simple sentence. And when you stop and think about that, and this is in low-income countries, that is a staggering number, right? It it's almost incomprehensible to think of how bad that is. And I think pre-pandemic it was 50%, which was bad enough, right? It indicates that whatever we're doing is not working all that well, and that means that that's the kids who are in school. So we also have what everyone here has been talking about, which is the kids who aren't in school, which is another whole problem, and that's also exacerbated by COVID. We're trying to get a sense, we're doing some work trying to figure out how many kids will not come back in countries, and in many places that's going to be very bad. You know, we're getting some early numbers, and you know, it's sort of what Malala was saying. Some of the kids are going into work. Some kids are going into early marriages, which is devastating for girls for so many reasons, right? Early and repeated childbearing. You know, their children are less likely to go to school. I mean, you know, the consequences are so bad all around. So we have children out of school. We have children in schools who are not learning well, and it's concerning not just to the parents and to the communities, but to the world as well, because what does that say to the next generation if these children are not getting educated? So to your point, I think we do need a very bold response to that, and that requires everyone coming to the table. So I think Unicef is certainly there working. Governments have to be a part of it, and it requires the investment that Malala mentioned. It requires the work of governments like Qatar or the nonprofits here that are doing amazing work. You know, we are working with the Educated Child effort here, which is so impressive, to try to identify children who are out of school and get them into school. And I think that Sheikha Mazza is really impressive in the way she looks at things and identifies problems and really thinks about ways to help it. We're doing a project with Microsoft called the Learning Passport, which tries to work with out-of-school children. We've developed a platform for children who are out of school to work on the internet to do some schoolwork. But it's 2 million children, which is a lot, but in the scheme of things, there's so many children who are still not having access to that. And, we're seeing just a huge divide where we used to think about education as a way, in the U.S. we would always talk about it as a way to get ahead, as a way, the great uniter in a way. And now it's becoming like a great divider in the world, where some children have access to education and great numbers of children either don't have access to any education or have access to a poor education. And I think that as a world community, we really have to think about how we can work together to make that better for children. And I think that the private sector has an important role in that, and we look to those partnerships. Governments have an important role, nonprofits have an important role. And are there risks involved? Yes, but I think that there are probably greater risks with people that we're not used to working with, but those people also are going to have different and new ideas. So for us, always, UNICEF in some ways, can be I'm not saying we're a difficult partner, but we have a lot of rules and regulations that we follow because we're always concerned about the safety of children. And so we're very careful about who we work with. But we're also open to new and different ideas and new and different partners because I think the challenges demand that.
So I'm going to move a little bit from, having goals, which are made up of words, to actions, to results. And that's, I know, we all work in this field. We know it's not easy. It's not easy translating a goal into action on the ground. And it has many different and often dependent inputs. And there are two of them that I'd like us to kind of delve into. And maybe, Catherine, you can sort of start us off, is between influence and impact. One is, your direct delivery, and the second is influencing other actors along with you. So can you explain why influence is an important part of UNICEF's impact?
Well, I would say that UNICEF has been around for a very long time, more than 75 years. We work in almost every country in the world in one form or another. We work with almost every country or actors in countries, every nonprofit. We are just widely known, and I think we have a lot of experience in the field. We have a lot of experience both with programs that work and with programs that don't work, and we have a lot of data that we share and experiences that we share, programs that we are more than happy to share the results with. And so I think that we have influence because we have experience, and we have, I am new to Unicef, so I'm not taking credit for this myself, but I think Unicef is widely respected because the work is so good. And everywhere I go now as a new head of the organization, people talk to me about how fantastic the work is on the ground. And I would say 85% of our teams, our staff is on the ground in different places in the world. And they work so closely with countries and with actors locally. And so it's not people sitting in New York or Washington thinking about, you know, big thoughts. It's really people out there working in communities. And so UNICEF, that reputation is important, and it gives us a lot of influence because it's based on the work and the success of the programs. And that's why people support us, and that's why we do have influence.
No, Catherine, you may be new to UNICEF, but I've worked with UNICEF for over a decade, and I can say that's exactly how it plays out. There's so many times that we have learned, and UNICEF has seeded programs within Educate Girls to scale, and sometimes they've taken best practices, like the way we survey for out-of-school children, and then seeded it to, you know, within the government systems or with the other partners. So, absolutely. Malala, your work includes both influence and impact. When and where is, you know, one more important than the other?
I think that's probably the hardest question. I think both are intertwined. And at Malala Fund, we support activists locally. As I mentioned, we have this Champions Network. We're supporting up to 80 activists and their organizations in more than 9 countries. And their work has been incredible. Like, they are passing legislations, they're making changes in it to ensure that education is more inclusive. There have been like some good news, for instance, from the state of Kaduna in the north of Nigeria, the same in Brazil as well, where they were able to push for education and regard it as emergency. And our champions in Pakistan have been able to talk about digital education and inclusivity. And we recently started a program with the government of Pakistan, which is focused on STEAM education. So I think there are different ways in which we can partner with governments, with local organizations, with international organizations to make an impact and also to make an influence. So I think there are these G7, G20 platforms where we ensure that girls' education and education in general receives attention. And there's the UN platform, and but there are also like national and regional platforms that are so important. We have been pushing OIC, the Organization of Islamic, the corporation conference, to push them to prioritize girls' education, because it's so impactful when the voice is coming from Muslim leaders, when they stand up for girls' education. It challenges any of those people who are misusing the name of Islam to justify any ban on girls' education. We are there to continue advocating for girls' education. Right now, one thing is really important to us, and that is the situation in Afghanistan. Afghanistan right now is the only country in the world where girls are still deprived to have access to secondary education. That needs to change as soon as possible. On the 23rd of March, girls were expecting to go back to their schools. They wore their uniform, they were standing outside their school gates, but they were not allowed to go in. So we know that primary education is not enough. Girls need complete 12 years of safe, quality, and free education. And this is the commitment we need to make to children all around the world. And I know that even just missing one day of school can have such a huge impact. Imagine missing out months and years of school, and it gets us back to the COVID-19 impact, the impact of climate, the impact of conflicts. All of these things are keeping children out of school for a longer period of time. And we know that especially for girls, they are the first ones to drop out of school and then the last ones to return. So girls' education in specific needs that attention, and that's the advocacy work that we will keep on doing. I hope that we see all girls in school in our lifetime. I hope that dream comes true.
I hope so too. And Mr. Al-Khawari, in what ways does Qatar Fund for Development have influence and impact?
Thank you, Malala, for your statement. I second everything you said, and I think, again, the right of education, especially in Afghanistan, should be allowed for all girls to all secondary and universities. It's a basic human right, and they should have the choice to join schools. Influence and impact, and you will need influence to make an impact, actually, and influence through advocacy is very important. You would need, as donors, we have these discussions among ourselves, and to encourage beneficiary countries to increase their budget and to use our money sometimes to increase that. We try to influence partnerships. Working together is better than working in silos. We're trying to influence policies as well whenever we can, as a reflection of the work we do. The advocacy and the importance of advocacy and influencing others is huge. And by that you can create a real impact, because impact is a result of that. And on Qatar Fund for Development and the State of Qatar, and different entities that we are working on when it comes to international development, we always focus on impact. We try to increase efficiency. We trying to be accurate about our details about the work we do and the efficiency of the work we do and the result, and not to allowing, even the work that we are doing when it comes to after school. It's very important not to allow the after school children to accumulate again, and by eliminating the root causes from the first place. So I think the impact that Qatar is doing in education, especially out of school children, in cooperation with the great work education above all is doing, is influencing others. And there is new partnerships every day generating, either with GPE, with the Islamic Development Bank, with development banks in general, and UN agencies, including the Unicef and others.
Great. Thank you so much. And Your Excellency, you had started us off on this panel. May I come back to you for closing remarks?
Okay. What else do you want me to say? Well, thank you very much. But first, let me again thank all my fellow panelists for the wonderful contribution we have made. And I'm sure those of us who are preoccupied with the education fraternity are encouraged when we hear the Qatar Fund for Development say those words of reassurance. Thank you. Well, what I can say in closing, that we have only 8 years to reach the audacious but vital sustainable development goal of inclusive, equitable, quality education for every child. Well, from the look of things, we are in danger of not being able to meet those targets. What is required of us now is we have to accelerate progress. How? By deepening partnerships, raising more capital, and innovating more. And of course, we have to remain agile, as GP was during the pandemic, when we created the world's largest emergency education fund. During the pandemic, GP spent $500 million to assist children in the most challenging circumstances to be able to learn. We must do all this because education is the key to a more peaceful, to a more prosperous, and to a sustainable world. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There is a part 2 to this discussion, which I hope you will sit in on. And we'll move to the second part of this, which is the theme of getting down to brass tacks, delivering on the ground. But thank you so much to all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Test.
Oh, okay. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I will mess up. All right. Can I just ask everybody to settle down, please? We do have part 2 of this wonderful discussion. May I invite on stage Mr. David Edwards, General Secretary, Education International. Yeah. And Mr. Michael Coker, General Manager, Aga Khan Foundation. Everybody, please take your seats. If you sit down, maybe. Yes. Thank you. Can we please ask everybody to take their seats? May I just ask everyone to take their seats, please? We're just going to take 30 seconds to start our next panel.
the phrase "a tough act to follow" comes to mind.
Yes, absolutely. Great. Welcome, Michael and David. A big, huge welcome.
Thank you.
And, the discussion till now has been fairly high level. We've been discussing why goals are needed and why they have to be translated into action on the ground. However, changing dynamics on the ground sometimes make even the most modest goals a challenge. So I want to see if we could talk about the current context in Afghanistan based on your work there or other difficult circumstances where, a goal and delivering on a goal has been really, really hard and kind of difficult. Mr. Coker, may I start with you?
You may. Safina, thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking Education Above All Foundation for the opportunity to be here today, and we are very delighted a couple hours ago to sign an MOU with them for a global collaboration on getting out of kids out of school, back into school, beginning, we hope, this year in Afghanistan. The Aga Khan Development Network, Aga Khan Foundation, AKF, has worked in Afghanistan now for more than 3 decades. The foundation itself has about 12,000 staff. We work in 9 provinces, 3,000 villages, and we have not closed our offices for a day since last August. And we have maintained and in fact are in the process of expanding our education efforts. And how do we do that? The short answer is, I think Malala said it, we are community-led. Our staff are 99.9% Afghan. They're from those villages where we work. And it's a simple model, but it's not always easy to do. You engage with communities, you're in a constant state of dialogue with them, you adapt, you adjust your programs. We're talking to moms and dads, community leaders, local mullahs, the students themselves, aunts, uncles, you name it. And what is it that they want? What is it that we can do? And look, there is all kinds of discussion now, a huge amount of tension, a great disappointment on the announcement that girls can't go to school. I think the task at hand is what can we do right now under these circumstances as things evolve. And I think something that's maybe underappreciated, certainly underinvested in, is community-led schools, community-based education. And that can take a lot of shapes. There are parent-teacher groups, teacher training is possible. You can equip community-based schools. There are tutoring programs, there are accelerated learning programs for children that are out of school. And I think it goes to, I think each of the panelists, at least 3 of them, made the key point. Education for children really is a fundamental human right. People say it. I don't think that's sufficiently codified anywhere, and I think we've seen some symptoms of that by, whereas, and it should be, food security and health have gotten investments, significant investments since last August. That's not been the same for education. No one operational in Afghanistan is naive. We understand the challenges, we understand them very well, but there are ways, even today, to invest in children's education, and it must happen.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right. I think the kind of ways in which we've had to pivot, we had to do like relief work, we had to do food delivery, we had to take kids for, take their parents for vaccinations. We're no longer an education organization.
Well, I think humanitarian work should encompass education by definition. And I think if one might set an audacious goal, it is investing in education, regardless of the circumstances, as intelligently as you can.
Yeah. And you're so right. We saw the same thing, that if the schools were closed, and we had schools in India were closed for over 500 days, right? And we just had to take education to the doorstep of the child because there is no other option. So I completely, that's exactly what we were seeing on the ground and what everybody had to pivot. Mr. Edwards, you're working with teachers and the organizations in Afghanistan. How's everything for you?
It's better for me than it is for them right now. I just received a statement just about 15 minutes ago which is their statement. So the teachers' organizations, we have 2 member organizations, Education International has, that they are deeply disappointed by the decision not to reopen schools, and the teachers are starting an advocacy campaign across the country. As we are already seeing, they're actually joining students, calling for the schools to be open. But you know, let's just say they were there was some skepticism early days. Teachers weren't paid for the first few months after August, and a lot of the donors were trying to figure out how that was even going to happen. Organizations that were on the ground, the community schools actually were able to sort of support in ways, I think, so there are lessons there. But I think it's a really difficult time. There's a lot of hope, there's a lot of trepidation. The teachers around the world have been building solidarity with them, so they're not alone. And I think one of the things is that in tumultuous times is to have solidarity. And it's also to be at the table. One of the other things that I think they've appreciated, and GPE was here, and Unicef, and Aga Khan, is that when the different organizations come through, they actually come to the table and talk to teachers and hear about what their needs are. And so they backward map from basically what the instructional and support needs of teachers are versus just telling them what to do, treating them like subjects versus objects.
I think that's really, really important. Michael, Aga Khan Foundation works in many insecure countries. What do you do if your funding partners become extremely cautious or risk averse? And because I mean, we saw this in the pandemic. A lot of our donors kind of said, well, when schools open, give us a call. And we're like, but we have an organization, we have staff, we're still serving children. I mean, donors can sometimes just be very, very, very risk averse. How do you handle that?
We have experienced that, certainly. COVID, as you say, but Afghanistan obviously has resulted in that for a range of reasons, geopolitical concern with the transition in the government, and obviously for a number of countries, concerns about sanctions as well. I think we're fortunate how we handled it as Aga Khan Foundation. We're fortunate that we have some internal resources to bring to bear, certainly. We also have a diversified donor base that helps us. So we're not overly reliant anywhere. You know, we're not donor dependent or donor driven. That said, we spend a lot of time in various capitals engaging donors and trying to get them to pivot. That's not simple, but we're at it. I think another donors, partnership generally. You can't approach education through sort of a one-year grant, right? I mean, it just doesn't work. You're not going to measure anything meaningfully in a year, and I may be anticipating questions, but the importance of anchor funding. I think. For education, we have to think about generational funding. That's the only way meaningfully that you're going to do it, and that takes a commitment beyond election cycles, beyond the geopolitical realities of the day. And an example, we have what we call a flexible fund that we utilize in Afghanistan, and we're able to, and through some of our internal resources, but also through donors that are understanding of these issues, and it allows us to make some adjustments. What are some of the obstacles in Afghanistan to girls' education? Well, a number of things, but some of the things that maybe don't get enough attention. Some schools are too far away from a given community or village, and parents are nervous about their girls going to school. Well, we can use flexible funding to arrange transportation, or we can use flexible funding to put a community-based school, community-run school, in that place, or that they want more women teachers, flexible funding to train women teachers, and this can be very tailored. So I think, think global, act local. It's been said, but it has to be put into practice with discipline. I think that's some of the means by which we navigate this. Thank you.
No, thank you. Because I think it's kind of common sense. You can't parachute in, parachute out in 1 year. Our own children's education takes more than a decade. And so why should a poor child's education be an investment of year-on-year grants? So I think it's a really critical piece, and I love what you're saying. It's about a generational funding is what we need. We work in villages and we stay there for 6 to 8 years because we want to make sure that, X number of cohorts are actually finishing schooling. Otherwise, it's worthless. But I also, I like what you're talking about, the flexible funding and things. But what do you think about anchor funding? Do you have any kind of anchor funding, or how do you think about financing or funding or?
For Education International?
Yeah.
We're completely self-funded by the teachers of the world.
Wonderful.
So 32 million teachers who are our members fund us. So we actually don't take very much outside funding. We made an exception recently for our Afghan Teacher Rights Observatory.
Right.
But we think anchor funding is, we think predictable, sustainable, long-term funding that's domestically based. I think 95% of the financing has to come in order to reach what our chair of GP was talking about, and Malala is 95% of that is going to have to come from domestic resource mobilization as well.
Absolutely. And what do you see as the role of influence in relation to impact?
It's an interesting question, and I know my friend Mary Joy really takes this, and that's why I'm here. Educators, they like to call us knowledge workers, but we like to think of ourselves more as wisdom workers. So teachers are in every single community in the world. And although we're not the best paid, it's not the best paid profession, no one goes into teaching to get rich, they have a lot of influence on the lives of communities and young people. And the aggregation of that influence is a deep responsibility that we carry at EI. And so I think what we try to do is ensure that we take that responsibility of aiming that influence in ways that are consistent with our values and are sure to translate into meaningful support in terms of conditions, learning conditions, teaching conditions, teachers' voice, ensuring that there's spaces, because we work in, Myanmar, where, how many teachers was it? 400,000 teachers were fired when the junta took over, right? So the influence we have there is as workers, working with all the other global federations to be able to kind of close off and put pressure on the junta there. But same thing if we're thinking about, Yemen, if we're thinking about Palestine, if we're thinking about Afghanistan, the elevation of teachers' voice in order to have impact is say, first, you have rights and you matter for the children, but then also to talk to governments about their obligation to make those rights, to realize those rights, and then keep that pressure up on governments to deliver on their promises for their citizens. So we're informing a citizenry, right, that is going to then put demands on governments as they take part through civic discourse and other things. And that's going to have an impact. And we're going to be holding people also, I like to say teachers unions have a sort of a built-in social accountability mechanism. Because we're in every single community, a lot of donors say, I'm not sure if that school got built in Maryland County in Liberia. Well, the head of the teachers of Liberia can make a phone call, have someone walk down the street and take a picture and tell you within 5 minutes. So we actually are the eyes and ears, I think, and we can have an impact when we use that influence collectively on behalf of the students of the world.
I think, it's amazing that you are standing with the teachers and amplifying their voice and just sort of organizing, because all of us have had that teacher in our life. They're the most transformative, people who kind of urge you. I dropped out of school. I've had teachers who kind of said, no, you can do it, and they're absolutely nation builders. Michael, how does your organization go about looking for opportunities without taking unnecessary risk, even though you're in geographies which are really tough?
Well, I think we begin, our national staff, we're overwhelmingly, our staff are from the countries and communities where we work, and that I think gives us an immediate insight into opportunities. And then I go back to communities. All of our work is community-driven, community-led, community-informed, and I think that gives us a certain insight. And then obviously, fora like this, keeping abreast of the broader opportunities for influence, impact, as we've been discussing. We do our homework, but I would credit our staff, who are quite good and quite heroic in their efforts to giving us insights into the best opportunities. And again, it all goes back to communities. It is so simple to say. You'll note I'm the only speaker that has notes up here. I am not a educationalist. I bet 90% of the people in this audience know more about education than me and could be in this seat. But I have learned through a lot of years that you are as good in this work as your community engagement, and you listen more than you speak, and that gives you insights into opportunities.
I think being community-led is really the bedrock of all of our work. We always say, it has to be local agent, local message, because you and I going and knocking on a door is not going to convince anyone. So
you can be pretty convincing.
Oh, you should hear the stories of the boo-boos that I've made, like trying to do that. So, sometimes teachers' unions are viewed as uncooperative. How do you address that perception?
I think there's some ministers in the audience that would agree with you, probably, right, David? Yeah, we understand that perception. One of the things that we have in our constitution of EI is we have a commitment to dialogue. That's policy dialogue and social dialogue. We might not agree on everything, but we will institutionalize it and we will sit down and we will talk through. Teachers' unions are representative on the board of the Global Partnership for Education. Education Cannot Wait, the SDG Steering Committee. We are working directly with teachers on the ground. Those are teachers' organizations. They're part of the local education groups. And sometimes they say, you know what, that EdTech platform you just sold me doesn't really work because I don't have electricity or I don't have a way of using it. And therefore, teachers' unions will say, we don't want you to waste money, waste time, and hurt kids. So we have a duty of care to students and to learners and to make sure that what's coming down is actually going to be instructionally, pedagogically appropriate in classrooms. So, if a school feeding program closes, we may take the streets. If you don't let girls learn, we may take the streets. If you don't pay us for 9 months, you see where I'm going. So sometimes we have to organize and be that. But I find by and large, where teachers' unions are solution-focused and values-driven, you will find a partner that has the same goals as you, as long as your goal isn't to replace them with a computer, right? And I think through COVID, we've come to the conclusion that staying at home with a computer isn't the best thing. So the whole world learned right now we like to be with teachers. We want kids in school with teachers. And teachers' unions want that too, and their organizations. And they're based on rights and democracy. And yeah, they can be a little rambunctious, but I mean, I have 186 of them. So if you only have one, think about it that way. I have 108, actually I have 400 of them in 186, 184 countries and jurisdictions. So 400 of them. So it's tougher to be me.
I was going to say something, but I won't. But thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to sort of just summarize. I think the time for incremental action and incremental goals is gone. COVID and the pandemic is showing us we really need audacious goals. Absolutely, that is the only way forward. To make audacious goals work, I think they have to be articulated very, very clearly. Educate Girls, when we became the TED Audacious Project, even our fieldwork, if you ask them, they would tell you, saying, oh, it's 1.5 million girls in 5 years and in these areas. Like, they have to just be very clear so that everybody from top to bottom can actually understand where we are headed, and that Bible needs to be, and therefore you can bring other people on to join that journey and to join then support that goal. So I think that, and having partners, I think governments as partners, as Catherine was saying, private players, but But the real fuel of Audacious goals is patient, flexible, long-term money. Right? It's with TED Audacious, most of the money is unrestricted. The donors are actually giving unrestricted because they know that to chase an audacious goal, you'll have to iterate, you will have lots of different challenges, and having the right fuel is absolutely kind of critical. The partnership, and then obviously making sure that you are operationalizing it on the ground, but influencing everybody else, influencing the global agenda. So I think wonderful themes that have come through in today's two panels, and thank you for being a fabulous audience. And I'm really absolutely very, very, very grateful to EAA and to EAC for hosting this.